Has the war in Ukraine spread over into Europe? What is going on with the bombs sent to the Spanish embassy, Ukrainian embassy in Spain, and other targets? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. It is December 1st, 2022. This is your daily Ukraine update. Let's get right into it. So first, as always, checking the map. Other than some minor clarifications around Bakhmut, there really hasn't been much of a change. I think a lot of these regions here at Kurdyumivka, Andriivka, Glachivka, these are all contested, and you can see this larger zone of contestation denoting that. But I think it's fair to say that we should take all claims by both sides of having seized any part of Bakhmut or the villages surrounding it with something of a grain of salt. But the real interesting news that has developed is, of course, the explosive devices mailed to various locations in Spain. And we're going to go over to Ground.News, a regular sponsor of this channel that sort of helps us tease out the reality of stories, especially stories like this, where it's fast breaking, and there's definitely the potential for partisan outlets to spin it in different ways. But you can see here, this story, almost certainly correct, covered across the political spectrum by tons of sources, regardless of ownership. I always link to Ground News. You can check them out for free in the description. But when we look over, it looks like the best reporting so far has been by Reuters, who have confirmed that there have been 5 letter bombs sent to locations in Spain that are at least in some way affiliated with the Spanish support of the Ukraine conflict. One included targeting the Spanish prime minister. Another targeted the Ukrainian ambassador in Spain. Another targeted an EU military satellite facility. And yet another targeted an arms manufacturer. Now, what I think is interesting about these is that while several of them have been destroyed by explosive ordnance disposal technicians with the Spanish government, one was in fact detonated in the Ukrainian embassy. And in that instance, what it said is that this is actually less of a bomb and more of an envelope containing pyrotechnic material. And this is something that is designed to go off when opened, but just sort of light on fire, right? There's some sort of combustible material. And so it's less likely to do direct harm and is more about sending a message, a very clear message to the different institutions that are supporting the Ukrainian military effort. The question is, of course, who's doing this and what is the message? Well, it's certainly possible. It's not inconceivable that this is done by Russia directly. They've certainly shown a willingness to violate what we would consider national sovereignty. For example, a Russian dissident who was given asylum in the UK was poisoned and subsequently killed, along with 2 other bystanders, by a Russian radiation poisoning effort that was directly ordered and done by the Russian government, by the Kremlin. It's also possible that this is the work of an oligarch who is not acting on direct orders from the Kremlin, but is trying in sort of a ham-handed way to facilitate, punish these EU nations that are supporting the Ukraine conflict. What's notable is that there is some precedence to this attack. There was in the early days of the Iraq War, there was actually Islamist fundamentalists detonated, I believe it was a bus. And here we go. Yeah, it was the 2004 Madrid train bombings, series of coordinated attacks against the commuter train system on March 11th, 3 days before the general elections, killing 193 people. This was one of the deadliest terror attacks in Spanish history. But the thing that makes it more interesting is that it was perpetrated again in response to the Spanish government's involvement in Iraq. Right. And there's a lot, right? And it was an unpopular war the government entered without the approval of the Spanish parliament. This actually resulted in Spain withdrawing their support in the Iraq war shortly thereafter. But again, this too was not found to be masterminded or directed by Iraq or even Al-Qaeda. It was an individual who sort of was acting on his own. And I believe this is probably a repetition of that, right? They're trying to achieve the same effect, which is to get the Spanish government to withdraw its support from Ukraine. And it sort of has the same kind of clumsy, sort of amateurish efforts that you might expect from a lone radicalized nationalist, possibly someone who's just drank the Russian Kool-Aid and is some sort of super pro-Russian guy. I would say that that's probably going to be found to be the most likely outcome, is my guess. Again, just a guess. I'm not party to any special information, but I believe that is what this is trying to not recreate, right? It's clear that these devices are not meant to kill or wound at scale. They are just meant to catch on fire and just be a reminder of the potential consequences, a message about the potential consequences of support for the Ukraine conflict. The question, of course, right, the Iraq war was already unpopular at baseline when Spain supported it. And so this, I think, has a much different public perception, given that it's Europe and that Russia is a fairly notorious adversary of most Western European countries. Anyway, guys, that is all I had for today's update. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, if you want the combat video breakdowns that are too spicy for YouTube, that I can't show you here, you want to go over to the Patreon. Thanks so much to my Lieutenant tier patrons. You guys are the ones who make this whole thing possible. I'll see you all in the next one.